Imagine a bird capable of paying for itself in feed costs in just 6 weeks, while a traditional backyard chicken forces you to wait up to 6 long months to see that very first egg. The coturnix quail breaks every rule of nature. It boasts a growth rate and production efficiency that seems straight out of a high-tech agricultural lab. We are not just talking about another barnyard bird here. We are talking about the smallest, fastest, and most profitable unit of protein production in the modern poultry world. If you are working with limited square footage, a tight budget, but possess a massive drive to achieve food security and generate a consistent income, today you are going to discover exactly why the coturnix quail has absolutely no competition. This bird has been the cornerstone of self-reliance in Asia for centuries, and today it stands as the ultimate solution for the modern homesteader who values time just as much as money. Let's get started. The reason we focus exclusively on the coturnix quail, often simply called the Japanese quail, is straightforward. It is a bird that has been purpose-bred to work tirelessly for the homesteader. Originally from the grasslands of East Asia, this species has undergone such rigorous selective breeding that today it is capable of laying up to 300 eggs a year, all while weighing only a fraction of what it consumes. Their metabolism is an absolute powerhouse. Everything they ingest transforms almost immediately into bone growth, muscle development, or a highly nutritious egg that vastly outperforms commercial chicken eggs in nutrient density. This explosive biological response is exactly what makes it the perfect gateway bird for modern homesteading, off-grid living, and both small and large-scale farming. It allows anyone, even in strictly urban environments, to achieve real food sovereignty. To truly understand their potential, we have to look at the hard data, because in precision poultry farming, the numbers do not lie. Let's talk about the FCR, or feed conversion ratio. A standard coturnix quail consumes roughly 0.8 ounces of feed per day. In stark contrast, a commercial laying hen easily consumes over 4 ounces a day to produce a similar long-term yield by weight. However, when you look at the FCR, the quail is vastly more efficient at converting that minimal amount of grain into eggs that pack 3 times more iron, 4 times more vitamin B1, and a much higher protein density per ounce than a chicken egg. Furthermore, stocking density is a massive advantage that the smart homesteader must leverage. In the exact same square footage where you could barely keep 3 or 4 highly stressed chickens, you can comfortably house a flock of 30 to 40 coturnix quail in perfect conditions of animal welfare, hygiene, and controlled production. Within the coturnix species, there is a wide array of breeding lines that have been stabilized to serve very specific purposes. Not all quail are created equal, and this is exactly where most beginners lose money, by failing to match their flock's genetics to their actual homesteading goals. We need to break down these genetic lines based on what you actually want to achieve. The standard Pharaoh egg line. This is the original, wild-colored line, selectively bred purely for relentless egg production. These are lightweight birds, generally tipping the scales between 5 and 6 ounces. Their ultimate competitive advantage is peak FCR. They eat the least amount of feed while laying the highest number of eggs year-round. If your business model or homestead goal is massive, daily egg production for eating or selling by the dozen, the standard Pharaoh is your best ally and will put the least amount of strain on your feed bill. The Jumbo Brown. Unlike the standard line, the Jumbo has been selectively bred over decades specifically for muscle mass and meat yield. These birds are significantly larger, easily reaching weights between 12 and 14 ounces, essentially doubling the size of the standard line. While their egg production is slightly lower, yielding around 180 to 220 eggs a year, their value as a dressed meat bird is exceptional. This is the absolute best choice for homesteaders looking for a true dual-purpose system, or those aiming to supply the gourmet meat market with heavy, premium birds. The Golden Manchurian. This is a stunning color mutation that retains an incredibly high production rate, very close to the standard Pharaoh, but features a brilliant golden plumage. They are visually striking and highly sought after in the backyard flock community. Many professional breeders favor the Manchurian because the feather patterns on the chest allow for incredibly early visual sexing compared to the darker traditional lines. This means you can identify and separate your roosters weeks earlier, saving you a fortune on feed for birds you don't intend to keep for breeding. The Texas A&M. Originally developed by agricultural researchers at Texas A&M University, this is the undisputed king of the commercial quail meat industry. By breeding a heavy jumbo-sized bird with pure white plumage, the resulting dressed carcass is incredibly clean, pink, and aesthetically perfect for the retail market, free of the dark pin feathers that can make brown lines look unappealing. They are docile, heavy birds with an explosive growth rate that makes them ready for processing in an astonishing 35 to 40 days. And as a pro tip, true Texas A&M quail usually carry a tiny distinct black or dark brown spot on their head or back, the biological signature of this specific genetic line. The real magic of these birds begins long before you see that first egg. It starts right inside the incubator. The life cycle of the coturnix is a constant reminder that in this business, time is your most valuable asset. A fertile egg takes a mere 17 days to hatch. From the exact moment that tiny chick pips and zips its way out of the shell, its biological clock shifts into overdrive. During the very first week of life, a coturnix chick will triple its hatch weight, a testament to a metabolism built for rapid survival. By week 3, they are fully feathered and off the supplemental heat. And by week 6, at just 42 to 45 days old, when they are biologically still just teenagers, the hens will start dropping their first eggs. This is an incredibly fast turnaround on your capital and inventory. It allows a breeder to correct genetic mistakes, improve the flock, and expand their setup in a matter of months. Achieving this same level of flock expansion with cattle, or even pigs, would require years of grueling work and massive capital investment. This extreme sexual precocity is their greatest virtue, but it is also their most unforgiving technical demand. Because they reach maturity in a highly compressed 6-week window, your margin for error in the brooder is practically zero. A single day of poor management, a cold draft, or a temperature drop in the brooder during the first 5 days doesn't just cause a slight growth delay, it can permanently stunt an entire generation and weaken the flock's long-term immune system. A successful quail breeder must develop a clinical eye, understanding that flock behavior dictates health long before visible symptoms of disease ever appear. A healthy coturnix is highly inquisitive, incredibly active, boasts dense, shiny feathers, and has an appetite that seems completely bottomless. When it comes to housing and logistics, the versatility of the coturnix is what makes this project so viable even in strict urban or suburban environments. Because they are ground-dwelling birds that do not require massive amounts of vertical airspace to fly, they adapt perfectly to stacked hutch systems with half-inch hardware cloth floors. This specific wire mesh design makes waste management incredibly simple and keeps the bird completely separated from its own droppings. And let's talk about that waste. Quail manure should never be viewed as trash. It is a highly valuable byproduct. It is one of the most potent organic fertilizers available, boasting nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium levels that put standard chicken manure to shame. This creates an enviable closed-loop sustainable system on your homestead where absolutely nothing is wasted. You harvest nutrient-dense eggs, premium meat, and a black gold compost capable of supercharging any garden bed. But for this high-speed biological machine to run at peak capacity, simply buying the best genetics or building the most expensive hutch is not enough. There is a delicate, almost sacred balance between what you put into the bird and what the bird can output into the egg tray. Many backyard projects fail before they even start because the keeper tries to feed their coturnix the exact same 16% layer crumbles they feed their chickens. That is the absolute fastest route to production failure and financial loss. The coturnix is not a miniature chicken. It has unique, demanding metabolic requirements that require strict attention to protein density and lighting management. These two foundational pillars will ultimately determine if your quail project becomes a steady stream of self-reliant income, or just an expensive hobby that drains your energy. Real success in raising coturnix quail doesn't come down to luck or chance. It comes down to the surgical precision of the details that most backyard hobbyists simply ignore out of convenience. If the first part of this journey was about understanding the raw biological and genetic potential of this bird, this second stage is exclusively about mastery. It is about how you, as a serious homesteader and flock manager, can dial in the environment, nutrition, and daily husbandry to turn that raw potential into a solid, scalable, and profitable enterprise. The single biggest misconception that beginners make is viewing the coturnix as just a miniature backyard chicken. However, their physiological needs are drastically different, especially when we enter the high-stakes realm of high-performance nutrition and biosecurity. For a coturnix hen to sustain a relentless laying rate of 300 eggs a year without suffering physical burnout or premature death, her diet must be a formula of absolute precision. While a standard industrial laying hen functions perfectly fine on a 16% or 17% layer crumble, the coturnix requires a strict minimum of 20% crude protein throughout her entire commercial laying phase. And if we are talking about the starter phase in the brooder, that requirement shoots up to a massive 24% to 27% game bird starter. But it is not just about the protein percentage printed on the feed tag, it is about the bioavailability of essential amino acids like methionine and lysine. Without these critical building blocks, the hen will not only halt egg production to preserve her own life, but her immune system will become incredibly fragile against any environmental pathogen. Premium feed is the high-octane fuel for this biological machine. If you try to pinch pennies by downgrading the quality of your grain or feeding cheap chicken scratch, you will end up paying dollars in high flock mortality, weak eggshells, and erratic FCR that will absolutely destroy your financial planning. Closely tied to high-octane nutrition is an environmental factor that acts as the ultimate biological switch for egg production, the photoperiod. The coturnix quail is one of the most highly photosensitive birds in the poultry world. In their natural wild state, these birds interpret the shortening of daylight hours as the unmistakable signal that winter is approaching. This triggers a massive hormonal shift that completely shuts down their reproductive system in order to conserve body heat and survive the freezing temperatures. For the homesteader looking for consistent profitability and food security, this natural shutdown is your worst enemy if you don't know how to manage it. To guarantee a steady, uniform egg drop 365 days a year, it is absolutely mandatory to provide a supplemental lighting schedule of 14 to 16 hours of daylight. This does not mean stressing your flock out with blinding floodlights all night long. Instead, it requires strategic supplementation with a dim, warm artificial light set on a simple timer during the early morning or late evening hours. This seemingly minor technical adjustment is the exact dividing line between homesteads that operate at a heavy loss during the winter months and those that keep their egg baskets overflowing regardless of the freezing temperatures outside. Sanitation and strict biosecurity constitute the third indispensable pillar of any serious poultry system. Even though the coturnix quail is remarkably resistant to many of the respiratory diseases that routinely decimate traditional broiler chicken flocks, they are not completely bulletproof. Their primary challenges are ulcerative enteritis and internal parasites like coccidiosis, both of which explode in environments with excess moisture and poor hygiene. The key to success here does not lie in stockpiling antibiotics, it lies in preventative co-op architecture. The design of your grow-out pens and breeding hutches must ensure that all droppings fall immediately through a half-inch hardware cloth floor, completely eliminating any direct contact between the bird and its own fecal matter. Because of their incredibly high-protein diet, the ammonia generated by quail waste is highly concentrated and deeply corrosive. Therefore, establishing steady cross-ventilation that continuously sweeps these toxic gases out of the hutch, without creating direct, chilling drafts on the birds, is absolutely critical to keeping their respiratory tracts healthy and their lungs operating at 100% capacity. Now let's talk about strategic profitability, because at the end of the day, raising livestock is a lifestyle business that must sustain itself economically. The market for coturnix quail is multifaceted, and true mastery lies in identifying exactly which niche to exploit based on your local geography and community demand. The foundational tier is the table egg market, a volume-based game where absolute freshness and professional packaging are your greatest sales tools. However, the real added value, where profit margins truly skyrocket, is found in the production of fertile hatching eggs and the sale of premium selected breeding stock. A dozen fertile hatching eggs from a stabilized jumbo brown line or a rare exotic color mutation can easily command 5 to 6 times the retail price of standard table eggs. If you also take the time to master the art of artificial incubation, selling day-old straight-run chicks is an incredibly efficient way to capitalize on your initial investment. It allows you to generate rapid cash flow without incurring the massive feed and housing space required to raise those birds to full adulthood. Strict culling and selection is what separates an amateur bird keeper from an elite flock manager with a long-term vision. In every single life cycle, which, as we've seen, is incredibly short, you have the golden opportunity to improve your farm's genetics. Do not let random chance dictate the future of your homestead. For your breeder pens, strictly select only those hens that initiated their laying cycle early, maintain a perfectly uniform egg size, and possess a robust, heavy bone structure. As for the roosters, look for active males with high libido, excellent, broad chest conformation, and a calm temperament that isn't excessively aggressive, preventing unnecessary stress within the breeder pen. By executing this systematic selection, you will essentially mold your very own proprietary bloodline, custom-tailored to your specific climate and husbandry methods. This is the premium genetics that other backyard farmers will eventually seek out, building your solid reputation and absolute authority within the poultry community. Even the byproducts of this system represent lucrative business opportunities that the astute entrepreneur should never ignore. Quail meat, increasingly prized for its lean profile and rich, dark meat flavor, has a guaranteed spot in the high-end restaurant market. Spent hens that have completed their laying cycle, or extra roosters from your meat lines, can be processed to offer premium dressed carcasses. And let's never forget the homesteader's black gold, fully composted quail manure. By properly composting the waste from your drop pans, you generate a premium-grade fertilizer highly sought after by organic market gardeners and local nurseries. This beautifully closes a productive loop where absolutely nothing is wasted and everything is monetized. By integrating these 4 fundamental elements, precision nutrition, strategic lighting management, strict biosecurity, and relentless genetic selection, you build an invincible agricultural system. It won't just weather market crises, it will give you the profound satisfaction of leading a highly impactful, deeply rewarding homesteading enterprise. The coturnix quail is, without a doubt, the ultimate expression of extreme efficiency in the domestic poultry world. It is the perfect bird for anyone looking for tangible, rapid, and scalable results without needing massive acreage. Throughout this breakdown, we've learned that homesteading success isn't an accident. It is the direct result of applying poultry science with strict discipline and passion. If you integrate these principles of handling, nutrition, and genetic selection into your daily routine, you aren't just guaranteeing the health of your flock, you are securing the long-term prosperity of your homestead. If this content brought real value to your vision as a breeder and you want to dive deeper into building automatic watering systems or advanced incubator protocols, make sure to subscribe and join our community. Your commitment to excellence is what drives this channel forward. To your success, fellow breeder, until next time.